Okay, so if you could raise your hand again. Prior meeting minutes approved by Commissioner Berkeley, Hassan, High Cupboard, Canham, Kashiani, Frank, Bondima. That's 7-0, everything approved.
Good job.
Now we're going to have committee reports. I'd actually like to start, we'll go out of order. We'll go policy, then teaching and learning, and then operations while I look for my notes.
Thank you, Commissioner Kashani. The policy committee did not meet, and as a reminder to the public, that this is, serving on the school board is the greatest volunteer job of the world, so 15 to 30 hours a week. And the reason we did not meet is we were not able to have a quorum because we were all out doing our own lives and jobs on that day. So the items from that policy meeting have been reset, and you can see them in the policy calendar for upcoming meetings. Our next meeting will be September 16th at 3:30 p.m. in this room.
Thanks, Commissioner Hassan. Commissioner Canham for teaching and learning.
Sure. We had a great Teaching and Learning Committee meeting this morning, actually. And the first item of business was looking at the school effectiveness reviews. I feel like this is a practice that has started and gotten better over time, and over 30 schools a year, a team of individuals go and dive into data, give feedback to schools, and have a deep dive topic that's actionable. And so we got a report out on the school effectiveness reviews for the team of 4 that's doing a really, really great job. So that was posted, and people want to see the data. It's really interesting. The second was we dove into school readiness, the instructional, how the instructional team has gotten ready for the school year. Talking about the Special Education Institute, the CAO's Institute, the CEO's Institute that's coming up, and how we're getting ready for the upcoming school year. Talked about new principal onboarding, and really talked quite a bit about we're rolling out a new math curriculum, the professional development that's going to be kind of aligned to our new math curriculum. And so that was the second piece of business that we talked about. And the third piece was the assessment strategy. I know that assessment's on people's minds, and how we're putting our assessments. We have the Parcc summative data, obviously, but then how are we using formative assessments? And we have iReady as well as other interim assessments that we're using, and how does it all fit together in the 16-17 year. We had a kind of robust discussion about how assessment's on people's mind, that we don't want to over-test and over-assess kids, but we really want to have actionable information data that teachers can use to improve results for our students. And so we had a really robust discussion on the assessment strategy, all of which is across the board in every grade level underneath the 2% of instructional time that the state is requiring us to do across the grades. So I know there's concern about over testing, but we're doing smart assessment and quality assessments, and we kind of had a good conversation about that. Would anybody like to add? Commissioner High Cupboard and Commissioner Berkeley were with me.
Yeah, just one piece of note, that the school effectiveness reviews, you can find them on the City Schools website by entering school effectiveness reviews in the search engine, and it will show you the 33 schools that were completed last year as well as the ones historically, so that public, parents, whatnot, can actually access the reviews on the website.
And we did talk about a kind of user-friendly way and version to make it really readily accessible. So parents, when they look at their schools, that was a discussion today, that they can get the information in a really easy-to-digest format because it's really high-quality information around the school. So that was teaching and learning. The next meeting is September 26th at 9 a.m. It's a public meeting, so please come.
The Operations Committee met on August 15th. There were a number of items we discussed. We had a good conversation about the comprehensive maintenance plan I think something that we appreciated learning was that they have reclassified 6 positions to be education building supervisors. And after really understanding what they had been, what they are now, the bottom line is that we've taken out 1 layer of supervision and we have more people actually performing repair work. So we feel like that'll be more efficient and a better use of resources. It was noted that 65% of our maintenance is for HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Is that what that stands for? That's what I thought. People say that like everybody knows. 65% is for HVAC. That's a broad range of things. That's not just air conditioning, but we are on the case on the air conditioning issue, just so you know. Commissioner Frank made a suggestion that the team, Blaine, who was making the presentation, was well received. Is this concept, I mean, many of us, when you've gotten repair work from a visit from Comcast or some customer service type organization, you get this automated survey that where you can rate the service that you got. And it was suggested that we should consider something like that, a customer service rating, so we could, since we're putting some things in place to increase the efficiency and quality of our service, it would be nice to know how people receive it. Maybe automate an email question as simple as, how did we do? And Blaine's suggestion was we could consider adding an automatic email to go out when the work order is closed. So that is something that was suggested and taken positively by the team, and people seem to think that would help us on an ongoing continuous improvement model. We then got a 21st century update. We're now transitioning from design construction to starting to actually open schools. And the combination of our 21st century team and our internal operations team is working really well together. It was noted, quote, Keith's team is doing a great job from the 21st century team. So you've gotten 2 kudos in 1 meeting, Keith. So now we said it twice, so that's 4. For December openings, it was asked a question, because it's one thing to say, oh, we're going to have some of these schools open in December or January. What does that mean for the schools, the communities? We will start, that work starts prior to December. By the time they actually open, all the furniture and technology will have been delivered, and those schools got a waiver of 2 less school days, so the teachers would have time to come in and set up. We are ready for opening on tomorrow. Let that sink in. Like tomorrow. Our first one of these is opening, and the second one is that's the official ribbon cutting. Obviously, it officially opens on the first day of school, which is Tuesday. And then the second kind of hoopla around an opening is on the 26th, which is Saturday. So congratulations to everybody involved, and there will be a big deal made about that tomorrow. Let's see. We also reviewed the next feasibility study for Mary Rodman. This will be our first substantial renovation without new construction. If you recall that the 23 to 28 schools are for new construction, substantial renovations with addition, or substantial renovations. And the question was asked, if I'm a child going to a substantially renovated school as opposed to a newly constructed school, would I know the difference when I walk in the building? And the answer was an unqualified yes. And then when they ticked off the things that will happen in a substantially renovated school, you understood why it's considered substantial. And in fact, the Mary Rodman, it's in the public documents for tonight. Our committee recommended that it move forward for consideration by the full board. When you look at that price tag, you get what they mean by substantial. Something else, Keith and his team then walked through the school readiness plan, which is a substantial laundry list of things that the operations team does to prepare the schools in our system to be ready for opening day. And it was a lot, but there was something in that report that really caught our attention, and that was a statement that vandalism has increased exponentially over the years. We didn't get an exact time frame, but the word exponentially caught our ears. And the board members at the meeting, Commissioner Frank, Commissioner Bondima, and myself, really felt like there was something that we need to understand a little bit more as a board. What is going on there? What are those issues? What do we know about that? And in particular, we wanted to know what we are or can do to understand the trends, the geography. Is this concentrated in some communities more than others? Because we think this is an opportunity to engage communities, families, so that we can really understand, are the kids trying to tell us something? It's one thing to just report that we are ongoing repairing because of vandalism and just reporting it and saying, okay, great, you're on, you're getting this done efficiently. It's another thing to really understand what's going on there. And this is not an issue that should be isolated for the operations team. So we kind of officially lodged that as we want to know more, and we'd like to figure out what deeper conversations we can have with the affected communities. Commissioner Frank Bondima, anything you want to add from that meeting? And that was the Operations Committee meeting. The board, in its executive session upstairs, already discussed personnel in quasi-judicial matters upstairs. We'd now like to sort of walk through the other items on the consent agenda. We just started this change at our July meeting, where we're going to discuss in the public meeting board questions and comments about items on the consent agenda, so people really have an understanding of what those deliberations are, and it adds a little bit of transparency to why we do or don't approve something by consent. After we hear public comments, we will then give the board an opportunity to yet pull additional items, because there may be items that the public ask some questions about that should influence whether or not we want to have a little bit more information about it. So with that, I'd like to walk through one by one the consent items and see if anybody has something that they want to pull. Item 8.01, Board Policy, BCA, Code of Ethics, second reader and board vote. Item 8.02, Board Policy, BLA, Procedures in Appeals and Hearings, second meeting and board vote. Item 8.03, Board Policy, BLB, Procedures in Appeals and Hearings. Did I just read that? Oh, BLB, Procedures in Appeals and Hearings, second reader and board vote. Item 8.04, New PCAB member recommendation and board vote. Item,
Question?
Just a question.
question?
I don't need to pull it for vote, but I want to make sure we're announcing who that is publicly. Are we doing that
After the vote?
Then we should,
after the vote?
after the vote, let's do
It can
that.
go by consent.
Let's,
I'm
let's
fine
have
with
that
I
go
just wanna
by
make sure
consent,
we're
but I think it's worth
acknowledging.
acknowledging that person. That's a good idea.
Okay.
Okay, good catch. Is she here? Even if she's not here. Yeah. Got it. Item 8.05, the feasibility study for Mary E. Rodman. Now on to the procurement items. Item 9.01, Education First. Item 10.01, ProQuest LLC. Item 10.02, International Baccalaureate Organization. Item 10.03, Multiple Vendors Supplemental Instructional Materials. Item 10.04, Speech and Language Pathology Services.
Just want to make a comment.
Yes.
For the last two, the multiple vendors, and speech and language, the last four that you read, we did have a discussion at Teaching and Learning about and talk through. And so I think a lot of questions were discussed then. But on this one, we talked had a conversation with the Chief Academic Officer about the evidence of effectiveness when we have these multiple vendors that are being approved to be taken care, that we're going to track how they're doing over time, and that's going to be part of the procurement request moving forward. So I just wanted to kind of, I don't need to pull it, but I just want to say that was the part of the conversation today.
I think it's useful as a general practice, when a committee has a detailed discussion about a procurement item, it's worth bringing that forward so the public knows that these are not just being sort of rubber stamped, that they are getting a good look at. So thanks, Peter, or Commissioner Canham.
Is that something that you would like to do? Because we did talk about these, and how would you?
I think if there were a lot of questions raised, if there's something you'd like to bring to light, like you just did, that's going to be how we monitor things, just as a general practice, if it was just, some simple questions about the item itself, I don't think we have to bring everything forward.
Great.
But I would use your judgment about the kinds of items that were brought forward for the public.
Okay, then I have one more.
No, I think that's fine, because I think the idea here is that we want people to understand the deliberations that goes into whether or not we approve something.
Do you want to do the IB one? I can do it, or you can. Okay. On the IB one, we talked about the funding for that we pay centrally. We talked about how the funding works for IB, because I think it was a consensus on the committee that we're getting a big return on investment for a relatively small amount of money that we're putting in and the schools are putting in. We're seeing great results. And so the question is, we've just had lots of questions on how does that get funded, and with a kind of eye towards, can we do more over time? And so that was, yeah. Come. Oh, and we're, over time, we have been serving more and more kids. So that's something we were really interested in and talked through.
Do you have anything you want to add to that? Okay. Item 10.04, speech and language pathology services. Item 10.05, the Achievement Network.
So this is another one that we talked through. I mean, it's a one-year contract for over $1 million. We are moving to Eureka Math, and if we're going to go into Eureka Math, we need the professional development to support the teachers, the interim assessments to kind of help them, give them the information and feedback. And so this is a shift that we've made, and that we're making an investment in to really and we approved Eureka Math, and this is the kind of a supporting investment to help our teachers implement.
Item 11.01, temporary employment staffing services. Item 12.01, the Maryland Education Enterprise Consortium. This was, we didn't have a lot of questions on it in the Operations Committee, but I did want to note that we brought up a question from a prior meeting from Commissioner Bondima about the distribution, the equitable distribution of technology across the district. This is kind of a tricky one, because we know that the technology is purchased centrally for cost efficiencies, but they're paid for out of school-based budgets through fair student funding. But we asked if we could see a snapshot of the technology distribution across schools, so we could just see if there is, based on the choices that people are making, if we're finding some schools at a disadvantage at not having technology. And we actually were told that that is underway and that we are going to see this inventory. We also found out during that discussion that we will have on-site technology support for all the new 21st century buildings at OHM, because they're 21st century buildings, so there's going to be new types of systems to operate, and we don't want to go through all the bother of building these new buildings and then have nobody know how to operate the systems. So that they've thought through that, and there will be tech support on site. 13.01, Cintas Corporation. 13.02, Baltimore City Department of Recreation and Parks. And 16.01, Funk in Bolton, PA. Well, I think this is the first time since I've been on the board. So we have no items pulled from consent. That's interesting.
So what we did as Ms. Perkins Cohen and I, realizing that we were moving through consent, I recommended that we go to 18.02, take a presentation, because we promised the public that we would not go to public comment until 6 o'clock. Those are two quick presentations, 1802 and 1803. They are not lengthy, and they're in the room and ready to go if you want to go out of order so that we could keep our promise to the public.
That's fine. Point of order, we have to vote on consent first.
No, ma'am, we're not voting on consent until after public
I got you.
comment.
Okay.
And the reason we changed that is because it's rare when something's not pulled, and we wanted to create the space for people to get the additional information that we requested. So we'll make an adjustment to the agenda so that we can make sure that we hold true to our commitment to having public comment start at 6 o'clock. So we'll go to, which one?
Agenda item 18.02. James?
There it is. We have to wait till 6 to do all that. Oh. Yeah, I forgot.
Is this the one? Are you okay? Oh, the clicker? Oh, he needs the clicker.
I'm not in control of that.
I will go find it for you.
Sorry.
Good evening, Commissioners, thank you, Chiefs, and the public. My name is James Torrance. I'm the Staff Specialist for Strategy and Compliance in the Office of the Chief Academic Officer. I was the Staff Liaison and lead on the policy adoption of service animals. Just a background, we are actually articulating what the ADA law requires us to do and provide access to students, staff, and visitors in Baltimore City facilities, specifically our schools. And we want to ensure that we are compliant and articulate that we want to preserve those rights for individuals. Also, we have a few definitions where we define who is a board employee, as well as we define who is a disabled person, and that is well defined by the ADA. As well as we define a service animal as any dog, so we're required to accept any dog that they present to us as a service animal. As well as we define a service animal in training, and that is for the instance in which we have maybe a student or an employee who is required to have a service animal mid-school year, so we provide an example and a preference in actual policy, regulation, and guidance to allow them to have it while they are getting acclimated to the actual environment that the animal will be assisting the person in. Also, we also define emotional support animals. As we have veterans who are coming back from war, we know that some people do not have visible wounds, and so we want to make sure that we provide an articulation for that as well. Thank you. Also, we also define access. We clearly define that they are permitted access to all public facilities. Anywhere that the public is allowed to go, the service animal is also allowed to go, and also in the actual work environment. We also require that individuals do not have to present documentation, but we also require that staff are only allowed to ask 2 questions, and that is if the animal is required because of a disability, and what work or tasks does the animal perform. Those are the only things that we're required to ask. As well as we define that they must have a harness, a leash, and also be trained. In instances where a person is hypoallergenic to an animal, service animal such as a dog, we have instances where we allow miniature horses by ADA. That is defined by the size and also the environment, and they also have to be housebroken and under sufficient control of their actual handler or owner. And whether it does not compromise the actual facility, for us as an urban school district, where does this animal defecate at and who is responsible for such animal in defecation and feeding. In terms of responsible offices, we have identified the Office of Special Education and also our EEO office and Title IX compliance to coordinate with staff and visitors and students to make sure that we have an office where they can actually go to and act as a resource to them. In terms of responsible offices, this is the things that they are requiring in arranging and making those arrangements. Arrest place, arrest time for the animal, as well as appropriate areas and times of day for the service animal. Service animals are trained in similar ways. For instance, a service dog may not need to be required to be taken outside. They may relieve themselves on simply a piece of paper. And the person or the handler is trained in actually how to appropriately dispose of it. In terms of liability and care, the onus is shifted to the owner and the handler. They are responsible for the liability and care of that said animal. For removal and exclusion, we define that if it's out of control of the handler. Also, if the animal is not housebroken, so if they're relieving themselves anywhere in the building, as well as the presence or fundamental altering of any natural environment in terms of services, such as if an animal is unable to be transported on a transportation, or if they're may be aggressive towards staff, students, or visitors. Again, if that happens, we can remove them, but we do not punish the person for the accommodation. We also will make accommodations for that person to have an additional animal to service them as well. That's why we also have in the regulations the service animal in training. And also we define what a service animal in training and what their trainer can do in terms of our facilities. In terms of engagement, we are reaching out to senior leadership, responsible offices, various bargaining units, special education advocates. I'm currently in contact with Disability Rights Maryland, and they're connecting me with the National Federation for the Blind, because we want to make sure that our advocates understand what this policy is and make sure that we make an accurate articulation of the rights. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
No questions?
What?
That's a hand.
Thank you, James. Thank you, James. James is nervous. James is nervous.
Commissioner Highcupper asked me just to reinforce the fact that these have come before the policy committee, and so we have had in-depth conversations on them. And just to clarify one piece that James said around the required questions to be asked by staff, those are also the limited questions that can be asked by staff. So if you encounter a service animal in school, you're welcome to ask the individual, do you have a disability and what does this animal perform? But you can't ask what that disability is or the limits of hours or anything like that, just because people do deserve their privacy. Thank you.
Thank you. So next up, we'll do one more presentation out of order before we go back to the regular agenda, and this is policy KHC around materials distribution.
Good evening, Chair Cassiani, Vice Chair Canham, CEO Santelises, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ann Fullerton. I'm the Executive Director of Communications for the district, and I'm here tonight to present policy KHC, which has to do with the circumstances under which materials can be either backpacked home with students or available in schools for pickup by students and other members of the school community. This relates to things like flyers, information sheets, announcements, and things of that sort. The issues around this are trying to ensure that the information that we send home with students and the information that's available in schools is useful and valuable to families and to students, but does not impede in any way on the running of the school, so that it's manageable for the staff to handle the materials, that things are distributed in an organized and efficient way, that things that are not of use to families are not sent home with students, and so forth. We also want to make sure that everyone, the school communities and any outside partners who wish to send things home with students, are clear about the circumstances under which that can happen. There are some legal considerations around this. Public school settings have been found to be limited public forums, so that there can be some restrictions around what's available in schools. But those, those restrictions have to be reasonable, and they have to ensure viewpoint neutrality, which means that if a certain type of group is able to make a certain type of information available, then other groups of the same kind would need to be able to make that information available as well. So, other Maryland districts have adhered to these legal considerations or responded to these legal considerations by putting certain restrictions on decision-making around what is available, either by defining the number or content of the information, or by restricting or limiting the types of organizations that can make information available in schools. We are proposing taking similar steps here in the district. We propose restricting things that can be backpacked home with students to only certain groups, and those would include city schools itself, either the school district or individual schools, either as the sole sponsor or in a group. For example, if we are Vision for Baltimore as an example, we are a partner in the Vision for Baltimore program with the health department and other agencies, that would be allowed to be backpacked home because we are a sponsoring organization. Also, the organized parent group in the school, at community schools, it would be the community school lead agency, and with the approval of the lead agency, also any of the community school partners. At charter and contract schools, the school operator could send things home. And then federal, state, and local government entities, in certain circumstances, candidates for office would not be allowed to send things home, or any material advocating for the election or not election of anyone who is running for office, as well as materials about referendum questions, unless those matters pertain directly to city schools. So if there were a flyer that listed a number of referendum questions, of which city schools had an interest in one, that would not be allowed. However, if it was exclusively about city schools, it would be allowed. In addition, this policy lays out some recommendations, this draft policy, about what could be available for pickup in schools. And that includes anything from the groups that are allowed to backpack home, as well as some extra things. Things from nonprofit organizations would be allowed to be displayed for pickup, and this means in the office, on a community table, on a magazine rack or something of that nature in the school. And also things from for-profit organizations, but only in certain categories, if they pertain to education, essentially. Or if they are devoted in some way to resources for the school. So that would enable things like a fundraiser, a flyer about a fundraiser to be available for pickup in the school. Any materials that are available for pickup from a third party would need to have a disclaimer on it, and they would also need to be approved by the school principal prior to their being made available. These recommendations were shared with the groups listed here, and the feedback that we got was pretty consistent. We had originally had a much narrower definition and had not allowed for-profit entities we're not considering allowing for-profit entities to be able to participate, but PCAB, the policy committee, and staff members here all felt that there were some valuable pieces of information that could be shared by for-profit entities, and we needed to find a way to make those available. And so that explains why they are there, but also why we've put the restrictions around the disclaimer and ensuring that the materials that are going home or being made available are educational in nature. This just outlines some of the feedback that we received, which I just went over. And that's the end. I do want to flag too, I apologize, we have a version control issue, and the version of this presentation that was uploaded to Board Docs is not the correct one. This is the correct one that we've just run through, and the draft regulations and draft policy that are on Board Docs are correct. And we'll flip out the presentation as soon as we're able.
Yeah, that would be great. The one that you just gave is clearly updated from the one that was on
Correct.
Board Docs, so our apologies for that.
No, that's on me.
Okay. Comments, questions, Commissioner Highcupboard?
Thank you for the presentation. Just one thing, I do share the concern of PCAB of not being able to backpack after school and summer school programming information because parents need access to that.
Right.
And having to come to school to try to find it is, I think, a little bit too difficult. Also, what do we do about emailing? We have lots of principals who email things to families. It's similar to backpacking. How does this apply in that instance?
I will need to talk to the legal office about that. I don't know.
I
This
think
was
it's the same
only-
as backpacking, right?
Yeah.
It's
Right. This was restricted to printed materials in the definition. I don't know, and here's Tammy, too.
thank you. Thank you, Chief Legal Counsel.
Yeah, because
exactly my question.
that's in reality.
That's where a lot of things are going
That's how
on
I get
now.
information.
I get emails on a regular basis, so.
Okay, so the policy is written in a way that the same rules would apply regardless of medium, so we'll have to go back and revisit that and speak with PCAB and some of the other stakeholders to make a recommendation to the board.
Thank you. I'm going to revise the second draft of policy.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Cannon?
That was my question.
Commissioner Hassan?
Just in general around this, so that people understand and remember the practice, later on in tonight's meeting, we'll be having some second readers of policies. So the interim time between the first reader and the second reader is a time to provide feedback. And in addition to Ms. Fullerton's email address, it's also policy@bcps.k12.md.us if you'd like to provide any kind of feedback on these. Thank you.
I would say a standard practice when we do a first reader presentation, in addition to the presenter's name and contact information, if we can also add, if you'd like to give further additional input and put that up so that for the record, people can remember it, because there is time for people to comment on these things. And while these may not be the most pressing issues for you, a lot of the policies are, and we want to make sure people take advantage of that. Okay.
We'd now like to vote on the two parts of the agenda that were, the consent agenda that were moved upstairs, the personnel and bond and judicial, and then the PEP agenda and the appeals and hearings. We'll do those together. Do I have a,
I'm sorry, Commissioner, just so that the record is clear, we're talking about items 501 through 511 of the agenda.
so we're going to take a vote on the PEP agenda and the appeals and hearings, items 5.01 through 5.11 on the agenda.
I move to accept as stated.
Motion by Commissioner Hightower to accept. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Brennan. All in favor? Commissioner Berkeley, Hassan, Hightower, Cannon, Kashani, Frank, Bondima, 7-0. Motion passes. So now I'm going to turn to the CEO.
Turn my microphone on. I'm going to turn to the CEO for the PEP, and then any special recognitions.
So I want to welcome Mr. Jeremy Grant Skinner, our Chief Human Capital Officer, to the table to announce this evening's PEP agenda. Mr. Grant Skinner.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dr. Santelises. Unless otherwise noted, each of these recommendations is effective August 23rd. First, recommended that Monique Rumo, currently Manager, Projects, Systems, and Processes in the 21st Century Buildings Plan Office, be appointed Assistant Director, Building Maintenance and Inspections. Recommended that Jackie Hayden, currently Special Assistant in the Chief of Schools Office, be appointed ILED for secondary schools. Recommended that Mark King, currently Chief Education Officer, the School Turnaround Group, be appointed ILED for elementary and middle schools effective August 28th. Recommended that Shyla Rao, currently Graduate Director and Faculty at the Maryland Institute College of Art, be appointed Principal, City Neighbors Hamilton, effective August 28th. Recommended that Stephen Skeen, currently Principal Resident, be appointed Academic Content Liaison for Mathematics. Recommended that Edna Harold, currently Assistant Principal at Coldstream Park Elementary Middle, be reassigned Assistant Principal, Claremont High. Recommended that Camilla Reese, currently Principal Resident, be reassigned Assistant Principal, National Academy Foundation High. Recommended that Ralph Baskerville, currently Assistant Principal, National Academy Foundation High, be reassigned Assistant Principal, the Reach Partnership School. Recommended that Susan Guerrera Abdullah, currently Assistant Principal at Cross Country Elementary Middle, be reassigned Assistant Principal, Banneker Blake Academy of Arts and Sciences. Recommended that Carolyn Rasson Fernandez, currently Teacher of Special Education at Northwood Elementary, be appointed Educational Specialist for Specialized Instruction, Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, effective August 28th. Recommended that Jessica Wilson, currently Director of Strategy and Compliance in the 21st Century Buildings Office, be appointed Director, Strategy and Compliance in the Chief Academic Officer's Office. And recommended that Joyce Jackson, currently Teacher Elementary, be appointed Educational Specialist to Gifted and Talented Education. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Grant Skinner. Welcome to all of our new appointees. As is our practice, I will just, for some of the senior appointments, including school leaders, just read a brief, sometimes pithy paragraph on each individual. I just think it's important for us to know the high quality of leadership that we're gaining within our district. So we have already welcomed Dr. Mark King to City Schools. I think it's important for us to know that as Dr. King is going to be serving as an ILED, he comes to City Schools with over 20 years of experience in public education, including service as a middle school teacher and award-winning middle and high school principal in Prince George's County, Maryland. Later, as an instructional superintendent for D.C. Public Schools, he supervised all middle schools, leading principals to make 4 consecutive years of academic growth while significantly reducing student suspensions. Dr. King decided to pursue teaching based on his experiences growing up in urban areas and seeing the need for African American role models in education. I will say this, that when I had the opportunity to speak with Dr. King, and first thing I asked him was, so why do you want to be in Baltimore City? And his response to me at that time was, Baltimore's kids are who I was as a kid. Mark says student achievement is directly related to social and emotional well-being. You can't address one without the other. He earned a master's degree from Florida A&M University and his doctoral degree in educational leadership from Bowie State. And welcome again, Dr. King. Ms. Jackie Hayden has been with us already, but she will be returning to the role of Instructional Leadership Executive Director, the same role that first brought her to City Schools in 2015. In the last year, she has willingly and with yeoman's energy served as a special assistant to the Chief of Schools. She's a native Washingtonian, and Ms. Hayden previously served in a variety of roles in D.C., including English language arts teacher, lead teacher, curriculum specialist, assistant principal, and principal. And one of the quotes from Jackie that she said is, quote, "The greatest choice that I ever made was to follow my heart and mind into serving and giving back to my community through education. Education changed and saved my life. I am proud and pleased to be able to pay the gift forward every single day." She holds a bachelor's degree from Trinity College and a master's degree from George Washington University. Congratulations again, Ms. Hayden. And finally, Dr. Shyla Rowe, who will be assuming the principalship at City Neighbors Charter School. Dr. Shyla Rowe comes to City Schools from Maryland Institute College of Art, as we affectionately here in the city refer to as MICA, where she served as director of the school's Master of Arts in Teaching program. After beginning her career 20 years ago as an art teacher in Baltimore City Schools, she served as both art teacher and curriculum coordinator in arts integrated schools in both Baltimore and New York City public schools. She has taught young people in every grade from kindergarten through 12th. With an interest in education from an international perspective, Dr. Rao has mentored artists and educators in Singapore, Japan, Kenya, and Jamaica. She says, quote, "Education is a form of social action that empowers young people to critically engage with their place in the world and affect change where they deem necessary. Learning should be fun, personally relevant, and community-focused." Shyla earned a Doctorate of Education degree at Columbia University Teachers College and both a Master of Arts in Teaching and a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree at MICA. Congratulations and welcome, Dr. Rao. Thank you, Commissioners, and I'll turn it back to Commissioner Kashani. Am I turning it back? Okay, sorry. And just so that the public knows, we're going a little out of order this evening, which is why we're a bit bumpy, and it's more to save you time, but I just want to finally congratulate again all of our candidates, and I will move to the CEO special recognitions portion of tonight's meeting. I want to thank the Board of Commissioners after the last 2 or 3 meetings where we've had significant recognitions. We've had nothing but positive feedback about the fact that we are using this time to showcase the efforts of our young people and their accomplishments, our educators, and our school leaders. And so in keeping with that tonight, and I promise it won't be 45 minutes long, which is what it was last meeting. We had a lot to celebrate, and it was wonderful. Tonight, we are preparing, as many of you know, to really celebrate with full force tomorrow the opening of our first 21st century school, Fort Worthington. We will celebrate Fort Worthington Elementary Middle School in a ribbon-cutting ceremony that marks the first of many new and renovated school buildings. These are buildings that our young people deserve, buildings and spaces that reflect what we as a community believe is the right level and a high level of investment in their future. And I am very pleased to introduce just a brief video featuring one of our student reporters with a preview of what is coming for the students and families at Fort Worthington. So I welcome everyone to view this video at this time, if we're ready.
Hello, this is Baston Saw with the City School Student Media Team, and we are here today at the new Fort Worthington Elementary Middle School that is opening up this coming school year, which is part of the 21st Century School Buildings Program.
Right now I'm here in the cafeteria where the finishing touches are being made to the stage, but I couldn't get over the fact of how big the kitchen is. Now I'm in the gymnasium where I cannot believe how big it is. The floor is amazing, the windows are so big, the kids are gonna have a blast in here.
We're outside on the second floor where it's overlooking the future playgrounds, basketball courts, and walking path that the community residents are looking forward to using.
Right now I'm in between the art room and the media center where kids can make sweet projects while using the kiln, and in the media center they have a TV studio. How sweet is that?
The rooms have daylight harvesters which dim the lights in front of windows if it is bright outside, which lowers the energy consumption. Now that's what I call a green school. This is the collaborative learning area where students and teachers can come together on this floor and be able to work together. Now this is what a completed classroom looks like. As you can see, they have smart projectors behind me and speakers up in the ceilings for teachers to be better heard by their students. Hey, now that's what I call a tour. I was impressed by everything that I've seen today. Our kids are going to have a blast in the fall. This has been Bass and Saw with the City School Student Media Team. See you next time. Hello.
So I will just say a number, we have probably over 200 people signed up to come tomorrow for this ceremony. I will, before I turn it back over to Commissioner Kashani, I just want to say that 2 individuals who will not be able to attend only because they had previous commitments beforehand, but I think that are incredibly important, and so I want to go on record as acknowledging them publicly. And like I said, on record are the former CEO, Andres Alonso, who I had an email exchange with over a couple of times, and he said, well, we've got many more new schools, Sonia, I'll get there for one of them. But truly, it was his leadership and mobilization. And when he first said to me, Sonia, the schools that kids go to say what we think about them. And he put the force of his leadership and his political capital on the line at a time when the country was in a deep recession and still pushed forward. And there were many people, but the day would not be complete for me if we did not acknowledge his leadership from the seat that I'm now sitting in. And then the second person that I'd like to acknowledge who will not be there tomorrow is Tisha Edwards, who served as Chief of Staff and Interim CEO, and she worked tirelessly behind the scenes. She took a lot of the burrs and a lot of the jabs when people were coming up and saying, why this now? Who made just the investment in young people in Baltimore City far more of a battle than it ever should have been. Tisha held the line. She held the line for our kids, and she never wavered. So I just want to take this time. There are many other people to honor and thank, but because they cannot be there tomorrow, I feel like it is important that 2 people I consider colleagues and educational leaders be acknowledged. So I want to thank you all for giving us this time. This is the beginning of what is long overdue, but is certainly welcomed. And with that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Kashani.
I mean, just one side editorial comment. I mean, as a person who came to a lot of the meetings in this room, broke out in small groups when we were just starting the conversations around education specifications, and hearing people say in every small group, we want more daylight, and we want, you know, collaborative learning space, and can there please be a real kitchen? I mean, these were the earliest conversations where nobody knew what anything was going to look like, and now to have the student reporter pointing out the real kitchen and the collaborative learning space and the green school features, it's really very exciting. I just sent a text message to Tisha and asked her if her ears were ringing. Commissioner Highcupboard?
I won't take up too much time, but I also want to thank, I won't name all of them, but the board members who voted on this. I was here, I'm the only one who's sitting here. I'm in tears because this is so amazing, but I just want to acknowledge those folks who were here, who sort of helped push this through. I'm not going to name all of them, but I just want to say, you know, thanks to Neil Dukas, former chair, and the rest of the board who sort of stood beside Dr. Alonso to get this passed and get it through.
And hopefully they'll be there tomorrow.
I hope
too.
so.
Okay.
I hope so. I don't know.
I mean, it's easy for us. We get to be there for the opening and, you know, be like the current board members, but there was a lot of heavy lifting that went on. And so just hear us straight. We're really, really, really proud of this, but the real work is now what's going on inside those walls. That's the work. And there's going to be we needed to focus on this because they were falling down around our kids, which, as Dr. Alonso said, that speaks volumes to them about who they are and what we think of them. But the real work, and you're going to hear a whole lot more about that over the next Like, that's all you're going to be hearing about, is what goes on inside those walls. We're clear about that. So with that, I think we have actually got to where we thought we would be at 6 o'clock. And so we want to, our public comment starts with our special recognized groups. The Parent and Community Advisory Board, Trish Garcia-Pilla, who graces our presence each time, is not able to be with us tonight, so speaking for her is going to be Sheila Billups. Is Sheila here? Oh, there she is.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Trish could not be here this evening. She had an emergency, and she asked me to deliver this message for her. Good evening, commissioners, Dr. Santelises, and school leaders. PCAP would like to remind everyone that we will be meeting publicly only once a month for a public meeting this school year, and the first meeting will be on September the 28th. Please check us out on the webpage of the district for this upcoming year and all the dates. We are working on getting feedback for policy ACE service animals and have a presentation to PCAP on September the 7th for policies JBA and JBB. We have given feedback for the policy FCE, materials and distributions. Thank you to everyone here that worked on filling our current open seats. We are excited to welcome our new members after tonight and have a full PCAP working group for this coming school year. Thank you so much.
Would this be an appropriate time to announce the new PCAB member? Who has that information? I mean, it's in there. I mean, let's pull it up. Here it is.
8.04.
Got it. So thanks, Ms. Billups. We are appointing the following individuals. Appointed members, Shantae Jackson-Guy and Julianne Kelly. And the summary of their background is in the public document. And also, Carolyn Combs is the overview of the PTA representative recommended for board approval, which we approved by consent.
You will approve by consent, more likely
All
than
right.
not.
So I'm still getting the drill here. If we approve it, it will also be Carolyn Combs. If I keep scrolling down, I'm told there's two alternates. Okay, Patricia Jones and Virgilio Victoriano. Okay, great. We now have general public comment. We have 3 people that signed up for public comment. Everybody must be home getting ready for school. First up is Corey Gaber.
There's just 3 people, we get more time, right?
Means we get to go home.
You know, I was thinking the same thing, but then I decided against it. No.
Hello, my name is Corey Gaber, and I'm a 6th grade teacher who has been trained in, implements, and loves restorative practices, which I'll refer to as RP from here on. According to the International Institute for Restorative Practices, the fundamental unifying hypothesis of RP is that, quote, human beings are happier, more cooperative and productive, and more likely to make positive changes in their behavior when those in positions of authority do things with them rather than to them or for them. A couple weeks ago, I was lucky enough to collaborate with Becky McCammon, who coordinates and supports RP rollout in St. Paul, Minnesota. Listening to her story was inspiring, with plenty of lessons to be learned for Baltimore City. The district worked together with the union to co-write a grant application. to fund a full-time restorative practices coordinator position and provide extra resources to schools as they rolled out this very new and different philosophy. In St. Paul, participation is voluntary. 75% of school staff needs to agree to implement RP, as does their principal, their version of school family councils, and then the various bodies of the school community work together to submit an application on how to best implement RP over time and utilize the additional resources provided. Not every school who applies is accepted because they don't want schools to roll out RP if they don't have the capacity to do it with fidelity. As a result, they only started with 6 schools their first year, then 9 the next year, and 12 the year after that. Every school's application who was approved received $150,000 to support that work in the year that they rolled that out for the first year. I'm going to skip a little ahead. I cannot say for sure how our plan compares to what St. Paul's accomplished since it's in draft form. I am worried that the plan might include the following elements which are antithetical to RP's philosophy. One, that implementation is district-wide, all at once, involuntary, and a top-down mandate. The current planning process did include focus groups, but unlike St. Paul, teachers and parents were not at the table when the implementation plan was written. Coupled with a potentially involuntary and unfunded mandate, this will feel to teachers like one more thing being done to us rather than with us, violating the very spirit of RP. If we attempt to implement RP without buy-in and without the necessary resources, school cultures will suffer, and even in ideal situations with buy-in and funding, research shows there's often an uptick in suspensions in the first 1 to 2 years of implementation as standards for behavior are raised beyond the past norm. We get one shot at this, and if we attempt to roll out restorative practices in a way that is antithetical to restorative practices, it'll fail and school communities will irreparably see RP as a failure, turning back to our hierarchical, racist system of punishment and control for another generation. To ensure this potential future doesn't come to fruition, the following 3 things I think needs to happen, as St. Paul's did. 1, don't push RP on schools whose leadership, families, and staff don't buy in first. Give each school an opportunity to write their own timeline and implementation plan once there's buy-in. Demand that experts and partners in the community are a part of every plan. And start this process after significant funding has been raised by the Baltimore community to implement it with fidelity. Once funding secured, ensure that there's at least a full summer of training site experts and school communities before kids arrive in the building. And finally, that we collaborate with the union and a university partner to lay out evaluation methods that include qualitative tools as well, so we're not solely focused on suspension numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Santelises, do you want to respond to some of the comments he made?
Sure. So I think one of the things that's important for people to know and for Mr. Gaber to know is that this Thursday we will be introducing to both principals as well as their school leadership teams that will be attending the CEO's Institute, the work that a number of cross-functional teams have been doing on what we will be rolling out as the blueprint. Part of that blueprint includes deep work on the social and emotional support for students and creating healthy cultures, school cultures. One of the 2 elements that you raised within that with regards to implementation that team took into account, and I think that you will see reflected in the implementation plan that we'll be discussing, that actually colleagues of yours across the district have participated in and that we've had feedback from teachers about. One is the self-selection and the self-identification of whole school communities for this. It will not be a full district-wide rollout, but actually, please do announce that the Open Society Institute is actually sponsoring 15 schools. We might disagree with the numbers in terms of where to start, but out of 180 schools, we feel that the best way to do that is to identify small cohorts while we work on certain elements of support for all schools, but that those schools will actually have to apply to be part of that cohort. They will have to meet that criteria, and part of what they will have to demonstrate is the extent to which they have involved all members of the school community. OSI, I will thank publicly for their support of this effort, both financially as well as with the technical support in developing the plan. So while it preempts a little bit of what we'll be talking about, I think it's important given the issue that you raised, the issues that you raised in your public comments, for you to know that we feel very similarly about making sure that restorative practices and a restorative, frankly, approach to schooling is authentic, and that we have examples of that within city schools. So that's, again, just a preview, but just so that you know, we share a lot of your same concerns about how things actually get implemented, particularly restorative practices.
I'm delighted to hear that. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that forward, and phew. That's great. Commissioner Hassan?
So, and I just want to let you know that I am a 20-year veteran of St. Paul Public Schools, so I have firsthand knowledge of how well this can work, as well as some of the foundational pieces to know that we can't just jump right there, that we had a level of readiness in many of our schools in that district based on years of work with response classrooms and other sort of pre-RP practices. So give us some time and some space as we grow here. We have the early adapters, we have the late adopters, and then we've got some people that are going to need a little bit more care and love along the way.
Kick in the butt, you mean? Thank you.
Next up is Keisha Goodwin.
Can you let me know when the time starts, please? All right. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back here again. I am an involved parent, active constituent, resident of Baltimore City, and an educator. And I truly believe a voice of knowledge must be nourished, not derailed nor smothered. I come here today to speak on two things: testing and contracts. After reading some of the information for the More Learning, Less Testing Act, it has come to my attention that it is mandated that testing is only 23.8 hours for elementary school, 25.7 hours for high school, and for 8th grade, 24.8 hours of testing. This includes classroom assessments from teachers, homework, classwork, and any projects that could be related to testing. If a student is given 30 minutes a week, and I say 36 weeks for school, that's 10.8 hours. If they are given 30 minutes a week, times 36 again, of classwork, that's 10.8 hours. And if a teacher has an assessment for 30 minutes a week, that's 10.8 hours as well. Already, we're at 30.8 hours. These hours don't even include the testing itself, which also has prep time, break time for restrooms, and packaging. So with that being said, we are well over testing hours. Not to mention that the third part of I-Ready runs directly into Parcc, which leaves the students for almost a month of testing and a month of disarray schedule. If they're testing in library, then students are not learning how to properly research. If they're testing in computer classes, they're not properly learning how to write a paper. They will not be prepared for high school and for college. They're not learning how to create documents in Excel or in Publisher. This goes against everything that we say we are about, educating students. We are neglecting our students in many ways.
Keisha, I just want to highlight you've got just a little bit of time left, and I know
For
you have a
contracts.
second item.
For contracts, I see that TFA hires 150 teachers. Urban residential teach hires about 30. Where does the teachers come from ordinary colleges? Where are those numbers? And our high turnover rate are mostly from TFA and some from residential teaching. With the temps, the high turnover rates, This contributes to a low morale in schools for students, teachers, parents. This contributes to the chaos and climate. And my last thing is protect our Schools Act. Where is the protection for teachers who speak up with what is going on in their schools? Where is their protection from the district?
Thanks, Keisha. Anybody have any questions, comments?
Yes, thank you for that. And earlier today, as Commissioner Canham stated, we talked about our assessment strategy for the 17-18 school year in the Teaching and Learning Committee. And one of the things that we've been really diligent about is listening and gathering feedback from teachers. And we heard a lot of the same things that you talked about right now from teachers. So in our assessment strategy for next year, we did scale back some of our testing with our iReady, not completely, but in certain parts based on teacher feedback. And within every area, I'm looking over at Chief Jones, I believe we are under the testing percentages in every grade level as well.
So in terms of the by grade level, I think there may be one or two where we're slightly above. And I do want to put some context around this legislation. So number one, in terms of the way the legislation was rolled out, it's actually a phased rollout. And so while there are thresholds around what the percentage of instructional time, districts actually have flexibility to make decisions to actually go above those minimums when it's warranted. So what has happened is in this first iteration, it's not a hard requirement to stay below those levels. What it says, though, is that there is to be consultation initially with the Baltimore Teachers Union, in our case, so it's your collective bargaining unit, around what that looks like for this first go-round, and we've had those meetings in accordance with those timelines. Then there's a second step, which then gets to what's the plan for the following year. That needs to be done by December 1st. And then there's a piece which actually involves the establishment of a district committee on assessment, which essentially will be that body that will also include those various stakeholder voices to help make these decisions going forward. So I think the point of it is the spirit of this legislation is very consistent with how the district has been approaching this body of work. What we've been trying to do is to balance the need for what information is needed so that teachers have what they need and students have the feedback that they need around their progress. So I think the long and short of it is I think there will be sort of like this ongoing need for us to continue to get information from the field, make adjustments as needed. But as it stands currently, we are certainly working within the spirit of the legislation, and we've met the requirements as it currently stands.
And we care very much how teachers are experiencing this, and not only just testing to test, but what are we going to do with the testing? And teachers ask us more time to be able to respond and adjust their instruction based on the data that we have. And in our new assessment strategy, we created that time.
Commissioner Huckabee?
I just want, Chief Jones, could you clarify, we heard this morning, the percent of time that the elementary children are spending on testing? I think it was very impressive. It was less than 1% of time, something like 7.
Yeah, and I don't have the information pulled up in front of me, but I mean, we have a detailed list that breaks it out by each of the grade levels and content level. And I think in the presentation we shared, there were essentially 3 examples that we showcased for those grades. And within that, those are below there. I think one of them is like a 1.7%, and I'd have to pull it to see what the other ones were in that deck.
I just recall being very impressed with the elementary number, specifically because it was 1% or under.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it does vary by grade level. I do just want to remind folks that part of the challenge within this whole situation is the state required assessments, and then what do we then as a district require in addition to that in terms of locally mandated assessments. So some of the types of assessments that Ms. Goodwin made reference to are actually not included in the count. So homework is not included, a teacher-created assessment is not included, classwork is not included, and the legislation explicitly states that. So what it does make reference to is essentially what are we mandating that every student is expected to take, and that being sort of more of a centralized decision-making process versus still providing flexibility at the school level for teachers and principals to work together and make adjustments based on the needs of their students and their teaching.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Canham, I think, just pulled up some of that information.
Yeah, today, we had a presentation on Board Docs assessment strategy that Mr. Conley presented, of the ones that are, that we're rolling out in second grade, a total of 7.83 hours of assessment, less than 1% of instructional hours for reading 3D, iReady, curriculum-embedded writing tasks, and math interims. Then we had a sixth grade example that we ran through, which now sixth grade you include Parcc. So if you add iReady, math interims, curriculum-embedded writing tasks, Parcc, that's a total of 18.5 hours for a sixth grader would experience in math, and that's 1.7 over the instructional hours. I just want you to know that, so I appreciate this. Dr. Jones and I have been having many conversations about how we need to have smart assessments, quality assessments, and not too much assessment. And I think this falls within that realm. So thank you. And the presentation's on board docs for anybody to review.
So I would encourage you to look at the presentation, but I also want to thank you, Keisha, for raising this, because there's a reasonable chance that you're not the only person who's got this on their mind. So the fact that you raise it gives us a chance to talk about it, not just at this morning's meeting, but also in this evening's meeting. So really appreciate that. Thank you. Next up, Kim Trueheart.
Okay, red, green. 3 minutes is not enough. Good evening. Congratulations. I'm proud to see you there. And I'm confident you're going to help us fix everything that's wrong. Okay. I've been having this conversation around accountability. And I'd like that throughout this question, how is the district accountable to the students? And what does that look like? And we got a reporter here in the room, right? And he's reporting on some stuff that just blows my mind, okay? And I'd like us to start thinking deeply about being accountable to the student and what that means. I had lots of questions. I've been posting extracts from your agenda on Facebook, and my 2,000 plus Facebook friends have been responding with their own questions about things. And so I posted this temporary employment services agreement, or an extract from it, and there were a whole bunch of questions. And I'd like to know more about that myself. And I don't know if you have any intent in giving us a presentation around that, but what kinds of staffing does that fill? I think would be a good thing. Mary E. Rodman, I went there. That was my school, right? So when you talk about substantially renovated, I'd like to see what that looks like, okay? And so I'm very, very excited about Mary E. Rodman. This morning at Liberty at 9 o'clock, Mr. Manko and about a dozen of us sat down and actually had a conversation that we labeled strategic planning. And so we are actually getting to the point where we're developing a strategic plan for Liberty, and I'm excited about that. Last time I was here, I mentioned to you that University of Maryland School of Psychiatry has this trauma-informed care curriculum model that they've put together. They came to the school 2 weeks ago, and we had a wonderful training session for this peer-to-peer coaching model that we're going to be one of the first in the city to implement. And I'm excited about it because we know a lot of our families are experiencing trauma, and then the children have to address that without any help. And the fact that we will be peer coaches for them, I think gives me lots of hope. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just a few comments. In the procurement items, we did have a conversation about that at the Teaching Operations Committee, so we are not planning to have a presentation about that tonight, but there is detail in there about the specific, it's mostly technical, specific services that are included in this. Information technology, legal counsel, financial and accounting. So it's in there.
I know that, you know that, but there's a whole lot of people who don't know that, right?
So
And
you-
so I was just
Got it.
making a suggestion that for the public's consumption, it might be good to allay concerns.
So duly noted, because earlier when we went through some of the items and Commissioner Canham reported on some of the details from the Teaching and Learning Committee, I did not do the same for the Operations Committee and noted.
Great.
That's helpful. Mary Rodman, and actually, I believe it's posted on the public, Keith, maybe you know, because I looked at it during teaching and learning, but I think the entire package for the feasibility study for
Is-
Mary
right.
Rodman, it's there, so you can see the schematics floor by floor.
Okay.
Obviously, when it's done and underway, you should take advantage of it and go take a look at it, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, you should, it's all in color and, have you taken a look at that? Because you said you wanted
I
to see what it looks
opened
like.
the PDF up.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, just one last comment. Tomorrow's opening, I think that's wonderful. And just for the public's consumption, we, Baltimore City, lost a rec center to build this new school. And it is critically important that as this school opens and operates, that it is truly embracing the community in a big way, not that you can completely make up for the loss of the rec center, but I think that is so critical, and, I'm hopeful.
Thank you. Shared and a lot of discussion around that, so thank you for pointing it out. That's our public comment for tonight. What I'd like to do now is to, based on public comment, are there any other items that board members would like to pull from the consent? Okay. With that, then, I'd like to take a vote on the consent agenda. There were no items pulled, so we'll,
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Commissioner Highcupboard moves. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Frank. All in favor? Commissioner Berkeley, Hassan, Highcupboard, Canham, Kashani, Frank, Bondima, 7-0. Consent passes. Come on. Consent pass, yay! All right. Under board chair comments, just I have one item that I wanted to call to everybody's attention, and then we'll talk about some gifts and donations. Ms. Stokes is not here from the mayor's office, but she shared with us that either today, it may have already happened, or tomorrow, the mayor's office is going to be posting on the city's website a notice that there's candidates being sought for the school board. We have a couple people whose terms are expiring. Those positions are opened up. One of the things that is going to be a real benefit to the community from this change that has the mayor appoint now is, even though it was anybody could have sent their documentation in for openings before to the state, I think now that it's the mayor has a sole appointment authority, it's a chance to really make a bigger announcement about it so more people are aware of this opportunity. Speaking personally, it's an honor and a privilege to serve, and so encourage you to check out this posting, and it'll also then be posted. We will pick up the link and post it on our website, which is something that didn't always happen before. You should read it closely. It talks about the qualifications, what you need to submit, which, having taken a look at this, has not changed from before. And it will, like I said, it'll be posted either tonight or tomorrow, and then you will have until 5 p.m. on September 22nd to have all your expressions of interest and documentation submitted. And there's a address and an email on the official announcement if you have any questions who you can contact. So thanks to the mayor's office for making this more widely known and available. The only other thing in chair's comments, there are two gifts to acknowledge. One is the acknowledgement of the gift of 840 backpacks containing back-to-school products with an estimated worth of $24,000 to be distributed to the Home and Hospital Homeless Program from the Kids in Need Foundation. So thank you for that. And the second is an acknowledgement of the gift from Valerie Legrome of 90 assembled backpacks and 50 hygiene kits valued at $1,279 to the students at Friendship Academy of Engineering and Technology Middle High School in Utah Marshburn. So thank you again for that gift. And anybody's welcome at any time to make gifts and donations to the Baltimore City Public Schools. With that, I'll turn it over to the CEO for her comments.
Thank you, Chair Kashani. It's funny, I have to say like Chair Kashani, Commissioner Kashani. That alliteration of the C really kind of gets me. I'll get it eventually. Good. So thank you very much. Late this afternoon, the results of the 2017 Parcc assessments were released by the State Department of Education. Our schools showed modest gains at nearly all grade levels in ELA. Performance overall was flat in mathematics. And one of the things that I will say that in no way, shape, or form would we even try to purport that we have reached the levels of student achievement that we want to see as measured by Parcc, or even frankly by other measures of student learning. What I do think is in fact true, that after a year where we had school leaders who had to leave their school to go and advocate for additional funding, where we had teachers who were not sure whether they would be actually employed. What this does signify is that we are still on an upward trajectory of improvement, that we are positioned for that. And later in this meeting, we will have Teresa Jones, who will come forward and walk through with us some of the surface data. I will say to the public what I have said to the board, and that is we will be doing additional analyses as we move forward. But I think one of the things that we can feel good about, quite frankly, is the fact that in the next 2 days we will be releasing to our school leaders, to their leadership teams, really where we are going, our direction and plan for the next 5 years that we have entitled really Building a Generation, and that is our city schools, Blueprint for Success. And what that does, what that blueprint does, is really begin to answer the question that a number of both families at the neighborhood level, as well as some of our own staff have asked in terms of where are we going, what are our focus areas, and the blueprint represents our work to do that. There were cross-functional teams that worked on the blueprint. We'll be speaking more about this, but the plan focuses on 3 priority areas that we've been talking about, I have been talking about, that the board has signed off on within student wholeness, literacy, and leadership, really with the goal of ensuring that all students, every student be graduated, that graduates from city schools is prepared to be successful in higher education and the global workforce. You're going to be hearing more about the Blueprint for Success in the coming weeks and months and years, but also wanted to make sure that as the announcement of the state Parcc scores are being released, that we here in Baltimore City know where we are, know where we're positioned. We're not where we want to be, but we are, I believe, on a trajectory for improvement within that. The other piece that I think really is important about this blueprint is that it goes actually beyond what Parcc test scores say about where our young people are, and actually addresses our young people as whole people. And a great example of that really is the work that we have done around academic eligibility for our student athletes. Our current board policy aligns with the Blueprint for Success, really within that context of student wholeness, that young people do need additional outlets to actually help them be more successful, but that at the same time, the board and staff believe that our young people are capable of meeting high levels of performance. Now, the current policy sets a GPA requirement for athletic eligibility of a 2.0 GPA and stipulates that student athletes shall have no more than one grade below passing. While that may seem to be a reasonable requirement, and I clearly have take no issue with that, the fact is that a 2.0 GPA, 2.0, excuse me, GPA is higher than the average student GPA in a large majority of our schools with interscholastic programs. So as a result, City Schools is at risk of losing a significant portion of its fall interscholastic opportunities prior to what was also, I think, a robust element of the implementation of this policy, which is the implementation of academic supports for student athletes in schools that are offering interscholastic sports programs. And I want to be clear, for people that know me, you would say I never would have thought otherwise, but I want to be clear to the broader public that I am in no way advocating for athletics at the expense of academics. My concerns really revolve around the fact that potential student athletes have not first been offered academic supports to help them achieve what we all agree is a reasonable academic standard. So as a result, enforcement of the current policy without those academic supports would be punitive to students rather than productive, and therefore really conflict with the goals for the Blueprint for Success and, quite frankly, our first priority of student wholeness. I think we can all agree that in addition to the obvious physical benefits that sports provide our young people, they also provide a range of social emotional benefits, including self-discipline, self-confidence, sportsmanship, teamwork and collaboration, respect for oneself and others, and traits that we often summarize as character building, and all of which contribute to student wholeness. And that, in turn, contributes to academic achievement, while also supporting our other priorities of literacy and leadership. So, for all of these reasons, we will establish, and I just want to commend both our academic staff as well as our head of athletics, and I don't know if Tiffany is in the room right now, who really did, I think, thoughtful and reflective work about how to maintain academic standards and success while not penalizing young people while we get the necessary academic supports in place. And so we will establish this year, for 1 year, the 2017-2018 school year, as a transitional academic eligibility year, in which we will put tutoring and academic supports in place to give our qualified athletes the opportunity to enjoy the benefits that sport provides while improving their academic performance. The academic offices will revise the current regulations to incorporate academic supports and processes and establish an academic probation for student athletes. This transitional year will reinstate some students, not all, but some student athletes' eligibility while providing supports to improve academic progress. And I will say that in the schools that have already begun some of this work, we are already seeing the increases the end of last year in student achievement and student GPAs. So we even have some in-district models for how this works when we give young people the supports that they need. We will also leverage our partnership with the Baltimore Ravens, Under Armour, and Inside Out initiative to support the social and emotional growth of student athletes. And really this effort that is being led by the Inside Out initiative and supported by the Ravens and Under Armour really is transforming a culture of win at all costs kind of approach to sports to one that really focuses on the intentional development of the educational, social, and emotional well-being of each student athlete. I want to thank those partners. Somehow it translates to young people and coaches when you say that the Ravens say that this is not about winning at all costs, but it is also about who you are as a person of character and an athlete who is on a leadership trajectory. But it's also important to note that we will also implement clear accountability measures throughout this transitional year, including weekly academic progress reports in season and weekly academic support meetings with coaching staff. Student athletes who don't earn a 2.0 GPA will have to sign an academic progress contract requiring them to set academic goals for the current marking period and holding them accountable for making satisfactory progress toward the required grade point average entering school year 2018-19. In summary, the establishment of a transitional academic eligibility year is aligned with our priority of student wholeness, recognizing that our students are more than a GPA. They are complete people with individual needs that must be addressed if they are to achieve success in school and life. This is just one example of how we will apply the principles of the Blueprint for Success and its priorities throughout our schools, starting with the current school year. Thank you.
So we got an amen from that side of the room. Commissioner Hassan, you have a comment, question?
I just want to help respond. There were many people that may have been following how involved with that particular policy I was, and that I am in complete support of our superintendent in that when I pushed really hard for this not to be a phased-in plan, it was very clear to me that if we phased it in, we also would not phase in the tutoring and phase in the supports the student need until over time. So the push that I did to make sure that this policy was right away and working with Ms. Bird led to the results of now we can say we can back off just a bit and find those spaces, but had we not said we need to do this and we need to do this now, we would have done this in a year or done this in 2 years. And our young people are just too valuable for that. So thank you for understanding and thank you for making the accommodations for our students and thank you for the community who had given input along the way.
So we're going to move now to the information and discussion portion of the agenda. I want to note that one item, the school police report card, has been pulled. The student groups that are working on that with our district personnel are still working on that. We've already had the presentation on the service animal policy and the materials distribution policy. So with that, I want to go to item 1804, school readiness, SY 1718. Who? No, it's 1804. We had changed the order.
Good evening, Chair Kasani, Dr. Santelises, and Commissioners. My name is Amanda Ellison. I'm the Director of Student and School Operations Support, and
I'm Latasha Moretti, the Special Assistant to the Chief Operating Officer.
And we are co-chairs of the school readiness process here at the district office. We're going to be bringing you just a quick summary of some of the items that we've been working on this summer, just so you can get an overview of where we are today. The big areas we're going to hit, of course, are the areas that we always want to talk about, which is staffing, transportation, scheduling, et cetera. We do want to note that this is the second year that all district offices have been supporting us with monitoring schools. So everyone from chiefs and directors and executive directors are going out and visiting schools and helping us have eyes on the ground. And it's been a really great experience to have everybody being out in schools. And those people who are participating are also bringing back great feedback. The first topic we're going to bring to you is school staffing. As you can see, and you've heard, we have just put our final principal school leader in place tonight. So every school does have a leader, which is a great place to be. We also know that we've been working on filling teacher and BTU vacancies. That number has been going down, as you can see, week to week. We are under 200 vacancies as of the end of last week, but we still do have some teacher vacancies. We know that the RIF was something that did happen this past year. It did slow our timeline down a little bit, and so these numbers are slightly higher than we saw at the same point last year. However, we just want to clarify for those people who understood that we had a RIF earlier in the year, there were very few teachers affected by the RIF, and the areas that we have vacancies and that we're hiring for are not in the same areas that we were had to part with earlier in the year. So we just want to make that very clear, that this was not any kind of crossover, that what the areas we're looking for are areas that we always are struggling to find. We always need to find special education teachers, for instance. So that's a large area of where we're looking for staffing today. Okay, let's go on.
So this year, transportation will continue with their 7 limited bell schedules. Transportation each year monitors various data points to ensure that all students who have been approved for transportation receive transportation at the start of school. In our student tracking system, as of the 16th of August, 2,994 students have been approved, and 2,469 have been approved by schools. It's important to note that ILEDs are assisting transportation by reaching out to those principals in schools who have yet to verify their students in STS. Transportation also works with various area offices, which include the Office of Special Ed, as well as the Homeless Office, to ensure that those area offices that have to approve students in STS are doing so as well. To date, there are 2,052 students that have been area approved as well as transportation approved. All routing letters went out to families on August 16th. I want to note that those routing letters were for those schools who began before Labor Day weekend. Routing letters will go out on August 24th for the schools that start after Labor Day. Also, additionally, any students that were not verified by August 18th will have to be routed on a rolling basis, as the students who were verified and received before August 18th have already been routed and will receive transportation for the start of school.
The next area we're going to address is student scheduling. We have made it very clear, I believe all principals are very aware, that no students should start the first day without a schedule. So in that light, we have been making sure and keeping an eye every week that students are getting scheduled, and those numbers continue to go up. The reason that we rarely get to be 100% is simply that we have a high amount of students that are still transferring. Students are making sure they get all their enrollment. They're getting them scheduled once they have a transcript, and they're making the best choices for transcripts. There are a couple of situations where you have fifth-year seniors who might have less classes, or you have a situation where a charter, I believe there's one charter school that does scheduling on the first day as part of their charter. So you'll also won't see 100%, but these numbers from August 14th have even gone up since then. We are well over 90% of our elementary and middle school students have complete schedules, and well over 90% of our high school students have at least 3 classes. There's 1 or 2 schools that also have exemptions to the 6 classes rule, which generally are schools with trimester or specific semester classes that they might only have 3 or 5 classes to start the year. We're also keeping an eye on student safety. We always have the police goes out to the major transportation hubs. They're at some of our larger schools, and of course where they're assigned to be in activities. We want to make sure that we share the safety tip line, which is on this slide, but it's at the bottom, so I'm going to point it out, 410-396-SAFE. We encourage people, if you see anything or have any concerns, that you contact our school police officers. They are constantly getting feedback from the district office or the hotline so that they can make their adjustments and be in the places where they need to be to keep our students safe.
Each year, facilities maintenance and operation works hand in hand with the schools and principals to ensure that all schools are ready to receive visitors, staff, and students. This year, principals received a 10-week cleanliness schedule, which monitored the cleanliness of their custodians. This will assist in the monitoring of the cleanliness for custodians. Some schools also have contract cleaners. They also abide by the 10-week cleanliness schedule. Schools also received in June a repair blitz schedule for those maintenance requests that will be completed in their schools for school readiness. In June, principals were also given the opportunity to additionally request any additional maintenance items that they deemed necessary for the start of school. Facilities also works with academics for those schools who have summer school programming in them to ensure that those schools are also ready for school opening. We also work hand in hand with design and construction because we realize there are several schools, 33 for this school year, that have summer construction work being done in them. We work closely with them. We monitor the progress of the work to ensure that none of that construction impedes school opening. We do realize that those sites with summer programming and those sites with construction may require additional support from operations. A couple of key departments that are critical to school readiness for facilities include our mechanical services and engineering team, who performs all of our renovations, including the installation of our AC units. Facilities contract maintenance, who does the preventative maintenance on those boilers and chillers, and they also perform minor capital and system repairs. Again, facilities design and construction has 33 projects. At this time, 7 of which are AC projects. And there are 39 design projects. Of course, projects have to go in design before they can be, before construction can start, and 13 of those will be AC projects.
Related to food services does most of their ordering actually at the end of the school year, and then they do their hiring over the summer, which again they've done, and they are well on track to making sure all schools are hired. We know there's a few schools that are starting at a different point this year. We have a couple schools starting early, and food services has been working very hard to make sure those staff are in place and ready to go. They all start very soon, in fact, so they're starting to receive their deliveries, and everyone else will start receiving their deliveries in the next week or so that every school is ready to open on September 5th. We also continue to provide free breakfast and lunch, and for some programs also after school snack and supper and the fresh fruit and vegetable program. So we provide that free to all students, and that's continuing from last year.
Schools have also already ordered all their materials and supplies based on their individual school needs. Schools who are receiving students from those closing schools have already received their reallocated furniture, technology, and instructional materials from those schools. Also, any additional district curriculum and assessments will be in place and ready for use for the start of school.
And last but not least, our communications. We know that Anne actually mentioned that before when she was talking about the policy, but we do have publications that we send home with students at the beginning of the year. So the back-to-school publications are being delivered to schools. They come in both English and Spanish. The packet, you may notice, is a little bit smaller this year. We're being a little bit more efficient with our use of paper. So we only have the 2017-18 Family Handbook and a couple of the required forms. A lot of other items will be available online so parents can access them, and we'll make sure that those are clearly accessible on our website and on our social media so everyone can access anything they need. We continue to have all kinds of social media robocalls and other reminders for families. We want to make sure everybody knows what day they're starting. And as I mentioned before, we do have a small subset of schools that start on August 28th, and the rest of our schools start the day after Labor Day, which is September 5th this year. The website does have a link if you go to calendars where it says alternative calendars, and it's very, very clear about which schools start early and which alternative professional development days that those schools are also closed on. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Highcupboard?
Thank you for the presentation. A couple questions. One, if a family is concerned about uniforms, books, materials for school, who can they contact to get support if they need help with those items?
Absolutely. So the first people they should contact is their school, because sometimes the school will have materials already on hand. If they're not able to contact or they're not sure what school they're going to, the engagement office is the office that will provide uniform vouchers and work with them. If the student is also homeless or in some other status, they can also contact those corresponding offices. We heard earlier the homeless office had a great donation this summer, so that they're going to be helping a lot of our homeless students with backpacks and other school supplies. So they definitely have a couple of places to reach out to.
Can we make sure that information's on social media so the parents understand where to go?
Absolutely.
Because what I don't want to have happen is kids are waiting until the first day of school to come ask for help, right? So if we can get that out as soon as possible, that'd be great. On slide 3, I want to make sure the language, I'm just clear on this. You talked about all schools have identified a principal or interim principal. So what, are you saying that every school has staffed and we have a principal? Is this identified? Have we PEP'd and approved, every school has a principal, we're ready to go for the school year?
Yes, we have PEP'd and approved. Every school has
I
either
want
a
them to
managing
say
assistant
it.
principal, an interim principal,
y'all.
or a full principal for the school year.
Yes. I want the language to be clear, because the language says schools have identified. And I
That's
want to make sure
correct.
we're saying.
But we've
every
identified
school
and PEP'd.
has a principal ready to go for the school year. Great. My other question is on that slide, we have 185 teacher vacancies currently. How are we going to fill those in the short time that we have? What are we doing to sort of lessen that gap? Sorry, Mr. Skinner. I mean, that's a big number.
I appreciate the question. First, as you saw on the slide with the numbers, these numbers are changing weekly
Daily.
and even daily. So in about 3 weeks, a little less than 3 weeks, we've brought down that number by almost 150. And therefore, mostly we are continuing to do the things that we've been doing to bring the number down. So we are continuing to partner and reach out to university partners to find out which, if they have additional recent graduates or summer graduates who are interested in teaching in the city. And we have a team of staffing specialists who works hand in hand with principals to help and guide them in their own recruitment. And we will continue doing these things for the next couple of weeks leading up to the first day of school.
I'm assuming we'll get another report on this then when school starts, where we are staffed.
Yes, I believe we bring a report after the first day of school in September.
Okay. And last but not least question, what is happening with every individual school? How do we know that those schools are ready? Do we have teams going out to schools? I mean, sort of explain to the public what happens so we know that schools are ready to open.
Absolutely. We work on a basis of getting as much information as we can. So we get information from a couple of sources. We have the principals self-report. They have a readiness checklist with many items on it that they can mark the status of those items. We also are using our managers, our ILEDs, our lead technicians, all of the district team members that normally go out to schools, all focus on readiness over the summer. So that's their big focus, and they flag concerns. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, we're using the district office again as part of the district office monitoring process. They have a short 2-page document that helps them, so they don't have to look at all 125 items that the principal might be following, but it helps them have a conversation with the principals and do a walk around the school, and then they have a way of reporting back. We share that out with all of our district offices, so if they find something at the school that might be concerning or that they're worried about might have an effect on the beginning of the school year, they can bring that back and they can either put it into that survey. Some of them also follow up with emails. Some of them also stop us in the hallway. So the information is definitely getting back to the offices, and we make sure that we're constantly giving feedback and reminding offices to provide feedback to the schools so that the schools also know that their concerns are being heard.
Commissioner Canham?
Hi, thanks. Could you go to the student scheduling slide? Because we had an in-depth conversation at Teaching and Learning today that it's 56.8% of high schools, 25 out of 44, that have 6 or more classes scheduled. And so this didn't square. I think what happened was you've looped in the middle schools here, and so it's obviously it looks much better, which I appreciate that it looks better, but at the end of the day, I want to make sure every high school kid who walks in the door September 5th has a schedule. So I guess we've already talked about this, but I just want to, and what we decided would that we get a weekly update at the end of Friday, the Friday before, progress to date, because I know people are busily working on it, but I just wanted to flag that, and don't know.
Absolutely. The data that's on here is from August the 14th, and also the data that I saw yesterday morning did show that there's a couple of charter schools that are in red. There's a couple of non-charter high schools that are in red. But of those students, or excuse me, of the schools in red, most of the cases there's no cases where nobody's scheduled. It's, of the non-charter schools, all the students have a start of a schedule. They have a couple of classes. And when I've spoken to those principals, because I personally want to be able to answer those questions also, most of those principals have been able to give me information specific to that school. We had one case where it was 85% of the students had 3 classes, but only 40% had 6 classes. And that was the case where they told me we're a trimester school. We have our first trimester fully scheduled, but we're working with our scheduler to get our second trimester and our third trimester so that when students come in, they can see their whole year. But they definitely have a schedule for the first day. So that's the type of information. I'm sure there are still some schools that are still working. Even day to day, I will see the numbers go up one day, and the next day will come down again, and I'll ask what happened. They'll say, oh, we had to start over and reschedule everyone. So that's still happening, but we know that all the schools are definitely working on it. And the only schools that I saw at 0% recently were charter schools that the charter office is working with. And all the non-charter schools, no one's at 0%. They're all just in that process of finishing up the schedules.
I mean, I guess my follow-up is it seems to be kind of late to be working on it. I don't know, what do we encourage as a practice? I mean, this is a conversation from Mr. Conley. What do we encourage as a practice or the district? What's the expectation of a schedule being completed?
I'll let you answer, but I do know the schedules were due much earlier. The ILEDs have been working with those schools. There's been some cases of principal turnover, and they've been waiting to the new principals in place to get the schedules in place. There's sometimes situations where they change their mind about whether they're going to do 4 classes or 5 classes. They're trying to adjust to the number of teachers they have. But for the most part, schedules were due much earlier for the high schools, for the secondary schools. The elementary schools are due over the summer because there is much easier to schedule. And we've been working as a whole district to move that scheduling deadline up. I think an ultimate goal that I've heard Dr. Santelises say is that we want students to go home at the end of the school year with their schedule for the next year. So that's something that over the next couple of years we're going to continue to work towards.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Glad somebody's on. When AJ tells me it's not on, I go like this. And I will just say this, Commissioner, that they are right. This is a proverbial bee in my bonnet. It drives me nuts when high school students in particular walk in, and that's why you see all the smiles. When they don't have their schedule, it is the right question. It's the pointed question. And part of what we are discussing, and I've, flagged, poor Mr. Davis has just come on board, so I'm not, I don't want to deluge him with another avalanche of things, but we've also talked about the on-the-ground work that needs to be done, particularly with our high schools. There is a culture that we are shifting, frankly, that says, still, and that's why you all are nodding, because they know too, we have a culture in this district that makes it okay to schedule a week or 2 before school starts, which is completely unacceptable, which is unacceptable to me as a parent, which every other, frankly, district worth its salt would never tolerate. And what it really is, and not to gloss it over, and I'm glad they didn't, is we have a culture shift. And that, it's okay for kids to sit in large auditoriums who are adolescents, waiting for somebody to give them a schedule, and then wondering why. We have enrollment challenges. and attendance issues, when the one day we can be guaranteed that an adolescent gives us the time of day to say, prove to me this is worth me coming every day, and we have them in an auditorium because we've only scheduled them for 2 classes, is unacceptable. So I just want to be very clear that it's unacceptable. I want to be clear that we have to shift expectation, and quite frankly, I think it is something that parents, that families need to ask for and need to let us know when it is not happening, because it is not normal. And it is not a given that you've got 50% of your student body in a large high school waiting for a schedule. So I just want to put that out there that way so that you know you've had the opportunity to hear what they have heard. Amanda put a lovely gloss on it to make me sound incredibly rational during my conversations about this. But the high school team is very much aware that this cannot continue. And it's a cultural issue.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner Hassan?
So my question also on student scheduling is actually about the elementary middle. And with what you said earlier, elementary scheduling is easier because they push it out, which then makes me really concerned that if we have a 90% average, that we've got a big group of middle school students at a time in their life where they're learning to advocate for themselves, maybe for the first time academically, where their parents are learning to let go a little bit more academically, just to make sure who's serving their needs and who's advocating for those middle school students to make sure they have a schedule as well. So I don't know if that's...
I can just say that when I checked, and I'm just going off the top of my head, there was the students that didn't have schedules were the pre-K program. There's one pre-K only program. They were still being scheduled. They're a small subset. And then there was the specialized school, and then the charter schools. There's still one charter school that across the board had 0%. And so those are schools that we're definitely watching. But everybody else was well up into the green 90% or higher areas. So there's individual students, I think, at some schools that are in the process of transferring or still finalizing. They might have done the entire school schedule, and now 5 new kids transferred in, so they have to get those schedules. But as the most part in elementary schedules, the majority of schools, I think it was 112 out of 118 were at green when I last checked. So the schools are definitely heading in the right direction. Doesn't appear to be any large subsets are missing, but we are keeping a close eye on it, and we'll continue to provide
I just wanted to make
updates.
sure that there weren't middle school students lost in that number. Thank you.
Look forward to getting the updates on this, because it sounds like this is another flashpoint for everybody.
I do just want to say a huge thank you. Every year, Latasha and Amanda really put their nose to the grind when everybody else is planning their vacations. They're planning how to use the summer, and I just want to say a personal thank you to both of them for your leadership in this area and making sure that we start ready and that every young person walks in the first day of school feeling wanted and having a positive outlook on the school year. So thanks for your work, ladies.
So we have one final presentation. Ms. Jones is going to, as Dr. Santelises said earlier, is going to give us the sort of initial look at the Parcc scores that'll be followed at some time in the near future with a deeper analysis. So thank you for pulling this together so quickly since these were just released.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Teresa Jones, Chief Achievement and Accountability Officer, and I have with me.
Good evening. My name is Shane Hall. I am Director of Research.
So again, as it has been already teed up, what our goal was this evening is to be able to provide you with just a top-line view of what the results are. We always think whenever the state releases its embargo on the data that we want to provide at least the public with a cursory overview. In this case, what we're going to be sharing with you this evening starts with an overview by content, by grade of our district performance in comparison to the state. And then we'll then talk more about our comparison of our results this year versus last year. So I'm going to ask Shane to go ahead and get us started. The first part actually just will give you just a table view of the numbers, but then we'll take a look at them comparison by a chart. So those graphs will actually allow you to see where the differences are actually statistically significant.
Okay, we'll start with the high altitude view. And what you see here is the proportion of students performing at levels 4 and 5, and that's meeting or exceeding standards, what we sometimes call proficiency, for 2016 and 2017, both for city schools and for the state. Overall, we are seeing continued improvement across most grade levels, with more students achieving levels 4 and 5 on the Parcc. The state also has posted gains in many areas, especially in English language arts. And I will notice that large performance gaps persist between city schools and those of the state. The numbers in green, that indicates an increase. Those in red indicate a decrease. These are just the raw gains and losses only. We will look at the statistical significance of these differences shortly for city schools. For the state results, which we just received this afternoon, we have not had the chance to conduct significance testing, but we will be doing so. We also in future will compare our results with those of other large LEAs in our state. Probably the largest increase here you see was in grade 7 as far as ELA. In math, overall you see smaller changes, smaller increases overall, in a lot of cases less than a single percentage point, with the exception being in grade 6, where you had an increase of nearly 2 percentage points. Statewide, they had a mix of increases and decreases, but again, sizable performance gaps persisting. Here you see that same table looking at the high school tests. We had increases in Algebra 2 and ELA 11, and then we had decreases in Algebra 1 and ELA 10. The state had mostly increases, but a sizable decrease in ELA 11, and you'll see a very small gap of less than a percentage point between our performance and that of the state. That was my reaction too. I was wow itself. I first thought I was looking at it incorrectly. Then we also at the bottom have just kind of a roll-up where we took all the ELA tests across all grades and then all the math tests across all grades, just to roll them up, just to kind of give you a single summative measure for our district. And we did the same with the state, comparing tests that both that we gave and that the state gave, tests that were in common.
One other comment before we move to the comparison and looking at the statistical significance. In terms of the way we analyze our data, we take out those students that are in non-public placements that are then assigned back to Baltimore City when the data are actually reported on MD report card. So it's a very important nuance, because what that means is we're reporting the results for those students that our teachers and faculty are actually teaching, not those that are in a separate non-public placement where our staff aren't responsible for delivering instruction. Commissioner Kashani.
Commissioner Highcupboard has a question about that.
Slide, just a quick question on the slide. On Algebra 1, the decrease of 11.4, I don't want to get too deep in the data, but does that include 8th grade students as well, or is this really kids in high school taking the exam? Because we've increased the number of kids taking algebra, so seeing a decrease isn't necessarily a bad thing if more kids are taking the exam. I'm just curious.
So the answer is yes, it does include 8th graders taking this test. So this is all the students that took that particular test. We have another slide where we're actually going to then take a look at the performance and what does that mean for those in terms of the graduation requirement, because that's another key consideration here. Algebra 1 and ELA 10 are graduation requirements. So one of the things that we're also unpacking is that we have some students that may have taken the test this year that may have actually taken the course previously and for whatever reason didn't take the test then. So we just want to be mindful that there could be multiple reasons. It could be the mix of the students, it could be the timing from when they took the course and the assessment, and that'll be part of the disaggregation for the further analyses.
All right, these bar charts display the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations in ELA across grades 3 through 8. And we use asterisks to denote statistical significance. And you can see the significant increases occurred in grades 3, 5, 6, and 7. There was one decrease in grade 8, but it was not statistically significant. So overall, some modest growth in ELA across these grade levels. Here's a similar chart for the results in math. Again, overall, smaller differences, smaller changes from the previous year. The exception being in grade 6, where you had a significant increase of 1.8 points, and then in grade 8, where we had a significant decrease of 1.3 points. And then here for the high school exams, ELA 10 and 11 and Algebra 1 and 2, you see the significant increases in ELA 11 and Algebra 2, and then you see a decrease in Algebra 1. A small decrease in ELA 10, but not statistically significant. Here we contrast the difference between meeting or exceeding expectations and meeting graduation requirements. The state is phasing in the minimum scale score needed to meet high school graduation requirements. Now in 2016-17, that minimum score was 725, equivalent to a level 3. So as you see here, the proportion meeting or exceeding standards is in those burnt orange bars. The gold bar shows the proportion of students meeting that minimum graduation requirement with a score of 725 or higher. And that is about 30% or higher for each subject. Now that minimum score for meeting graduation requirements is going to increase each year until the school year 2019-2020, when that level 4 minimum of 750 is scheduled to take effect.
Just one quick point of clarification for the board and for the public. The way, correct me if I'm wrong, but the MSDE reporting of the state proficiency rates are also being computed the same way, correct? They are including students at levels 3 through 5 and then phasing in the higher scores along the way, correct?
When you said in terms of their reporting, I mean, this is the way that they're reporting out for the students that have met the graduation requirements.
Understood.
Still, when they're talking proficiency, they're still looking at levels 4 and 5,
Okay, so,
the passing rates.
right, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page around what actually is the number or percentage of students in city schools that are meeting the rate of 4 or 5 as college and career ready, as opposed to 3 through 5.
That's
for
correct.
college and career ready, and then how we compare that to the state's definition and reporting of the same.
That's correct. That's correct. So the answer to your,
So could you walk us through this slide again and indicate which is which? Because,
Okay.
I just want to make sure.
So let's speak first to the orange bars. So the orange bars are intended to capture level 4 and 5 performance, which is having met or exceeded those expectations. So that's the defined definition of passing the Parcc as demonstrated proficiency. Because there's a phase-in, as Shane was describing, in terms of what the minimum cut score would be to actually meet the state's high school graduation requirements, the answer to that question is it's a different level. So for this first year here, because remember the prior year, students, in order to meet the graduation requirements, simply had to sit for the test. All they had to do was to take the test. They did not have to have a certain cut score in order to be considered having met the graduation requirements. Now that we're actually at the point where we're actually using the scores, the state has phased that in. So the orange bars gets you to a measure of proficiency, having met levels 4 and 5. The yellow / burnt, I don't know what we call that, mustard color bars gives us the sense in terms of students that have actually met the state's graduation requirements during this transition period.
That's a 3.
And that's equivalent to a 3 currently.
So one of the things that we wanted to be mindful of is we don't want folks anchoring in on a level 3 as being
Right, that's the
proficient.
thing.
That
Right.
is
That's
not,
why I
that's
said
not,
So
that's
it's
the point
orange.
that we're making. What we want to do is just make sure that people also understand that because these two are graduation requirement subjects, that the numbers are different. That's all, just in the spirit of transparency, because if people get confused about the fact that these are the numbers just in terms of proficiency, people may jump to the conclusion that our students aren't meeting the graduation requirements, which would not be a fair assumption, because we are still have somewhere in the range of 30% of the students that have actually met the state's graduation requirements due to this transition. Does that help a bit?
Let's take this in order. Commissioner Frank expressed some confusion even with the clarification.
Okay.
Do you want to take a shot since you got it right away?
Right, and it's gonna drive Teresa crazy because I'm never as precise because, well, and I'm just being.
It's okay.
Right, is that sometimes the precision actually confuses
That's correct.
kind of the common.
Well, that's just what
the
happened.
common person.
That's exactly what
right?
just happened. So if you
So
could try
I'm
to
gonna do a little
unpack it.
translation. Teresa, we're now a year in working together, so she gets it when I do this. So I'm gonna talk it back.
Yes.
And you absolutely feel free to correct me. You don't have to add the other footnotes, but when I'm absolutely off,
Okay.
then you should interject, okay?
Here's
You
the
got it.
translation version.
So the translation version is that the orange bars represent student proficiency levels at levels 4 and 5, which the Parcc defines as being college and career ready.
Correct.
The mustard represents student performance at levels 3 through 5 on the Parcc, because that's what the state now defines as, for the current time, as our high school graduation requirements, right? So orange is levels 4 and 5, which is really college and career ready. Mustard represents the young people who qualify based on this transition period, which is levels 3, 4, and 5. Correct?
Correct. Yes.
Got it. So,
Please.
so Andy,
just-
Commissioner Frank first, then we'll go,
So
Cannon
I
and
wasn't
Highcover.
sure if you were expressing a point of view on the 3 versus 4 and 5.
And it really is not necessarily a point of view, but it is to emphasize so that we are all clear that a lot of times in the language, the way either the press reports it or we talk about it, we conflate, we put the two together, but there is a higher standard. So the Parcc assessment itself says young people who reach levels 4 and 5 are performing at the level that the Parcc is designed to indicate true college and career readiness. A majority of states, a large number of states, not just Maryland, have implemented a gradual movement towards that ultimate levels 4 and 5, and level 3, which is a lower level, is now being included in the transition as what they're requiring for for high school graduation. So what I want people to understand is that as we move to the higher level, and I don't know, you all would know where the state is, have they made a decision on whether levels 4 and 5 will ultimately be used for high school graduation? Or are they silent on that matter as of now?
They have said that, yes, it will be used, and actually, if you look on slide 14, can you flip really quickly? What we've included also in the deck for this very reason is at the bottom, it shows what that transition plan is for those scores over the course of the next few years. So while we're started in at sort of the starting point for a level 3, we end at the starting point for a level 4 by school year 2019-20.
Commissioner Cannon?
Okay, that was super helpful, because that's by 1920, we have to be at a level 4.
That's correct.
To
meet
graduate right
in
now.
Maryland, to graduate high school in these two subjects.
And let's go
That's
back.
correct.
Let's go back, because if we took our scores now, and we imagine we would have 17% in ELA and 11.4% meeting the graduation requirement.
That is correct.
And that's the big headline. That's just,
That's
yeah.
why I wanted to make
yes,
sure
that's
that the
the,
board
so
and the
we
public
don't,
are clear.
That's
And I guess my question is, I know this is new, this is just released, this data, but how are other jurisdictions in the state of Maryland doing against this? Do we have that data yet?
We just got the data. We
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to do the full.
Yeah, right. I think that's important to know. Like, this is a going to be a Baltimore challenge, but it's a Maryland state challenge, and we've got to address it.
We look forward to unpacking those numbers and sharing them with you in future presentation.
And also, just to reiterate the point, that's actually part of the reason that the state adopted a transition plan to actually getting to the level 4 and 5 proficiency, because the state at large for that first year, the results were not that stellar. So to be thinking about what does this mean in terms of maintaining a high bar for college and career readiness at the level 4, they wanted to just be mindful of doing it in a way that actually would allow for that to happen.
Commissioner Highcovered?
Yeah, I love slide 14. Thank you for pointing that out to us. I want to caution us from saying the state requirement is a 3, because a 3 is not a 3 is not a 3. So on that slide, what's saying is the bar for 3 moves every year. So it's not just being able to get a 3, it is about getting
That's
those
correct.
numbers
That's correct.
that get us higher. So make sure folks are listening to this or sort of understand that piece. I just want to make sure we're clear about it. My other question, though, is before, when we didn't have Parcc, we had MSA, we had Bridge. Do we have something like that for our students as we move forward in these higher standards that can do some alternative approach to passing if they don't meet these standards?
Yes.
Now, I'm not advocating for that. I just want to know what it is.
Yes, there is a new version of Bridge. I don't know if there's anyone here from Teaching and Learning that can sort of speak to those requirements. Janice just said they haven't released the full update.
It's your birthday. Why are you here? Dr. S., why can't she go home? It's her birthday.
I just wanted to go officially on record that neither and I don't know about the CAO, and I can't speak to this time. I did not require our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning to be here for tonight's board meeting. I'm glad she is, but.
Just to be clear that we did establish a guideline that I think you created, that all executive directors and above be at board meetings.
Even on their birthday?
I don't know that came up specifically, but we didn't make an exclusion. So I just want to say that I'm not sure it's totally fair to say.
What a better gift than a morning meeting and an evening meeting with the board, so that's a great birthday celebration.
Nice try.
Actually, Dr. Jackson and I were just in the back talking about this. There are new guidelines around what's coming for that bridge. MSD is working on that guidance right now with us because they are extended projects. So they're going back to more performance-based learning within the project. So it doesn't just seem like it's an alternative for an easier pass, but really to look at the rigor alignment within that. We can bring some more information to you around that and give you a presentation around the details of what content areas and what criteria within that.
Maybe teaching and learning, that'd be great. We could have a deeper understanding and dialogue around that. I'm not advocating that we push our kids towards Bridge. We obviously want them to pass. But in the meantime, I want to make sure our kids are also able to graduate. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So you want to pick it up on page 8?
Here we start to break out some of the results by subgroup. We will, of course, be doing this further as we continue our analysis. But here we have the proportion of students meeting or exceeding expectations, levels 4 and 5, in ELA by race ethnicity across 2 different grade bands, 3 through 5 and 6 through 8. In grade band 3 through 5, we see that all 3 of our largest racial and ethnic groups posted statistically significant gains over their 2016 performance. In grade band 6 through 8, smaller changes, with the only statistically significant gain over the prior year being among African American students. Here we see similar results in math for race ethnicity. Overall, few significant changes. The only significant increase occurring in grade band 3 through 5 among white students. Again, as you saw earlier, looking at the overall aggregates, there were much smaller changes in math compared to the prior year.
Given the conversation that we just had about the state requirements and level 3, I'm curious, is there any value to these same bar charts with 3, 4, and 5 to see the changes year to year? Or we're just looking at 4 and 5 here, and I'm wondering, is there any value to seeing 3, 4, and 5
We could
combined?
certainly provide it for reference. I mean, we've chosen not to because, again, the bar has been set that proficiency is at a level 4. So we think by focusing on that, that actually gives us the more meaningful measure. However, recognizing that there is still transition happening, we can certainly provide whichever views would be of the most interest for the board and for the public.
I will also say that in follow-up, and one of the things that Mr. Davis referenced in an earlier meeting that I think is important, that we'll be taking a look at, is also movement across levels for young people. Given our push, my push, namely around growth, I think it's going to be important for our communication with schools to actually track the movement of young people across these performance bands. So to your point, and maybe it wasn't your point, but I'll make it, and that is that we have to be able to track where kids are moving through those bands, not just when they go from level 1 to level 5, because there is movement across the band.
Here we compare the performance of students by economically disadvantaged status. Economically disadvantaged, we're adopting the term being used by the federal Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. With the transition to community eligibility provision, we no longer collect FARMS applications. So here, economically disadvantaged is comprised of those students who are directly certified, which is they are either receiving TANF, SNAP, are homeless, or are in foster care. So this compares our economically disadvantaged and non-economically disadvantaged performance for 2017. And as you will see, there are sizable performance gaps between ED and non-ED students. And then here we see those similar results by economically disadvantaged status for the 4 high school exams. And as you saw, consistent with the grade band analyses, sizable performance gaps between the two groups. We are always interested in growth. We've had some discussions of growth here this evening. There are multiple ways of looking at growth, and we are analyzing the data in greater detail to understand growth in the most meaningful ways possible. One approach to growth is looking at the extent to which students are growing across performance levels. Did students grow from one performance level to another? This is sometimes called a growth to proficiency or growth to target approach. So here we start to break that down a little bit, and of course we'll be going into more detail in future. But to do that, you have to look at students who tested both years, in the previous year, 2016, and in this most recent year. And so here in ELA, we display in this graph a little of what that looks like. Out of more than 25,000 students who tested in ELA in grades 3 through 8, in both years, 2015 and 2017, we see that just over a quarter grew 1 or more performance levels. That could be going from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, from 3 to 4, or even growing more than 1 performance level, which can occasionally happen. Another 55.2% maintained the same performance level. That is, they performed, for example, somebody at level 3 in 2016 performed again at level 3 in 2017 at the next higher grade, which in itself does represent a year of growth. And then...
Can you just restate that? Say that one more time.
Okay.
When we're talking about the same level, are you taking third graders one year and third graders the next year and seeing how many? Or are you saying the kid goes from third grade to fourth grade and they maintain the level?
Third grade to fourth grade who maintained a level.
Okay.
They were at level 3 in the third grade, and then in fourth grade again performed at level 3.
And so you're saying that's a year's growth by maintaining three.
That's
Yes,
correct. Because
correct.
they were solid third graders in third grade, and now they're solid fourth graders in fourth grade, which is a year.
Yeah, but
So even though it's still level
Or you
three.
need
Because
more
they're-
than a year's growth to get to level 4.
Right.
That's another way of saying it.
And then finally, 19% fell one or more performance levels. Just for perspective, when we did this a year ago, looking at the baseline year and the second year, you had about 21% grew a level, about 53% maintaining, and 26% declining. So there are some encouraging results looking at this most recent year's results. Here's the same graphic for math, and here again, about 25,000 students testing both years, 19.5% growing one or more performance levels, 55.4% maintained, and 25% declining. And again, just for perspective, those results are very similar to those when we did this the prior year, looking at growth from 2015 to 2016. A year ago, you saw about 21% growing, 53% maintaining, and around a little over 25% decreasing. And then here the table we showed you earlier that breaks down the performance levels and their corresponding scale scores, as well as the state's plan for phasing in the minimum score for high school graduation requirements.
So any more questions, comments? Commissioner Frank?
Two questions. One question is, how do we use this data to change outcomes? How do we make this data available to principals? And what kind of supports do we provide to the schools so they can do similar kinds of analysis of the Parcc data that they receive?
So first, in terms of the data themselves, so when the data became available to us, we did work through a plan to actually disseminate the results to schools. So schools actually had access to their reports and their summary school level data within the Pearson Access Next system at around the same time that we did, so around August the 4th, more or less. So typically, whenever we send out those results, we do refer them to the toolkit, so it sort of speaks to the interpretation of results, things of that nature. Part of what we're doing now is a part of the protocols around the analysis of their data. We are going to be sharing with them some guidance around analyzing their Parcc data in conjunction with their other data as they go into their planning process for this upcoming year. It is one of those things that obviously school leaders are always anxious to get. So for some school leaders, like they've already dissected the data in terms of looking at not just the students that they had for the prior year, but also the students that they have coming in, because in some cases those will be new students to them and they may not be unfamiliar with their performance. So being able to take that data and then start using that as they're planning for the return of students, of teachers next week is a part of some of that initial professional development planning for what's happening with teachers when they return. Sean, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add.
The only thing I would add is interested in, as this is like a high level here, so interested as we dig into it, the teaching and learning team and your team get into like the sub-claims, getting into the standard and seeing where we're strong and where we're weak, and then how that influences professional development and conversations with schools.
Commissioner Bondima?
No, I think you just answered it, but I just want to get it more clear because I want to ask it anyway. I was looking at the data. You do give professional development to all of the principals and assistant principals to evaluate it so they can understand the data that they're getting and how they're going to use it. That's correct? That's what you just said?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay.
So when we look at the data, we're talking about like 4s and 5s, 3s, 4s, and
Yes,
5s. But when you get into the Parcc data, like there's subclaims, and like what does that mean within the standard, and drill in deeper into it, and then what does that mean for teachers and adjusting their practices and areas to focus, like a student is strong in this area or weak in this area. So I'm interested in how our teaching and learning team and OAA break that down, because if we find that there's something within the standard that we are not strong with, then we know we have to provide professional development to schools within that content area, or that standard, I mean.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
You,
Yes,
they
okay.
receive,
Yeah.
that's all I'm
Okay,
asking.
I thought you were saying, do we help or provide professional development to principals on how to actually like break down that data? I cannot speak to that. It's
Okay,
more about
because
the
my
professional development for teachers.
Right, but still my concern is if the teacher, the principals, or whoever's going to be looking at this data, do they understand what
That's
they're looking
exactly
at?
right. That's
And you
the
do
question.
professional development, that's my question. Okay, thank you.
So this won't be the last we hear. This is the first cut. There's been some questions raised, some different ways we want to view it, so we appreciate that you'll come back to us when we have some of the state comparisons and can go a little bit deeper. That completes our agenda for tonight. I want to just make note of the upcoming meetings. The next public board meeting, executive session, and board meeting are on September 12th. In this room. Operations Committee will be in this room on the 19th of September. Policy Committee, let's see. The Operations Committee is at 10 a.m. The Policy Committee is at 3:30 on September 19th, and Teaching and Learning is at 9 a.m. on September 26th, all in this room. And just a note, by the time anybody comes back in this room for a large public meeting, couple of pretty significant things will have happened. All the schools will be open, so we wish all our parents and families, good luck on your final preparations. Enjoy your extra week of offness. And in that mix will be 2 brand-new schools. Let's just appreciate and celebrate that moment, as then we turn our attention to what goes on inside those schools. And pretty significant, given some of the stuff we heard tonight, will be, as of Thursday, Dr. Santelises and her team will roll out the blueprint. So a reasonable question one could ask is, so what are we going to do about all this data and how much we have to do? And the answer is the vision that's behind the blueprint. So we all look forward to that and working together, board and staff and parents and communities, on making that a reality. So enjoy your last couple weeks, and we look forward to seeing everybody back here on the 12th. What do I have to do? I just was about to do that. May I have a motion to close the meeting? Commissioner Hyde-Hubbard has moved that we close. Commissioner Bondima has seconded that motion. All in favor? Everybody's in favor, without even doing a roll call. With that, we are adjourned.
7:51.
Thank you.